Hi there, everyone. My name is Brad Sturmer. I'm an elementary principal in a small town, Southwest Wisconsin. I've been that for about 6 years now. Prior to that, I was a high school math teacher and did a little bit of administration at that level too. But I'm definitely a math guy. Love math. I think when I known that since I was young and just always came easy to me. And I decided to pursue a degree in mathematics in college, and then as I developed in that stage, like, what am I going to do with this math degree? And I wanted to help people and help serve others, and teaching was definitely the route to go. And it was a great choice. And here I am, and here I am recording this video for people I don't even know if that who's watching, but I want this to be very helpful and help you to be able to help serve your students, in focusing on mathematical achievement. And I know this presentation is with strategies of effective teaching. And I'm going to take you a little deeper than that, quite a bit deeper than that, because there's a lot that's got to come prior to that. So let me share my screen here with everybody. I don't want to talk anymore about myself. I got a brief introduction on the slide that you'll see here in your resources. But my title for this is just a blueprint for mathematical excellence. And you'll see a strong focus on the people, structures, and systems that need to be in place for effective teaching to happen. Okay, so I got to show you some data, because one, just so you can see, that we're legit, not bragging about our school, but this is some good stuff. So, like, prior to me coming to the elementary school, which uniquely is in the same district where I was a high school math teacher, we were just struggling in this building with math proficiency. As you see, in 2017, 18 on our forward exam, we were at 38.5%, almost last in our CISA. But have definitely improved upon that, and it actually improved rather quickly. And you can see those 2 school years where we're in the 60s, lower 60s, and not this most recent school year, but the one prior to that, we were at 70. We were in the 70s as far as percents of proficiency there. So I don't know why I'm not putting this into more of a slideshow, because there you go. I can see it better. It's 74% proficiency, which is we're really excited about. And actually within that's 3 through 5th data. Our third grade class was at 85% proficient. Also data that we're really excited about, because we focus a lot on tier 1, of course, but then interventions, but enrichment's got to be looked at, because there's a lot of smart kids in our building. And the disappointing numbers in the beginning of my tenure here, looking at the advanced kids on forward, was 6 in those 3 grade levels back in 2018, so 3% of our students. You can see over the course of time that's jumped to 10 to 31 to 46, and then in the 2022-23 school year, we were almost 30% of our students are considered advanced on that assessment. And that's data that really excites us, like, big time. You guys are all math people too. When you look at data, you like it just in general, but obviously when you're seeing mathematical success, it's a great thing. And we use FastBridge. This over here on the screen is just the last 4 years of longitudinal data on FastBridge of proficient and advanced. As you can see, this most recent school year, so the 2023-24 school year, in the spring here recently, we're at 82% proficient or advanced, and you can see that light blue on the top. That's the bar that indicates our advanced kids according to FastBridge, which is approaching on 60% of our kids. So we're pumped about that. That's 2nd through 3rd grade data, and I'm sure we'll see great forward scores again. Not why we do it, folks, right? We're not in it to just produce high data, but we're in our vision is to produce high levels of learning. And of course, when you see the data that shows that that's happening, it's obviously exciting. So got to show you that. It's easy to brag about our team, about our kids, about our school, but you just know, you can see that we got some good things going on. And I want to try to teach you and explain to you some of the things that we do that can hopefully fit your school, because I fully understand that the things we do here work here really well and at a high level, but they might not work that way in your school. but maybe you can see how we do it and how that could be tweaked to what you do. And also, I know some of you, maybe you're teachers or teacher leaders, or maybe there are some principals. You know, there's some things that you're going to see in this that maybe you can change, but maybe there's some things that you can't, but you can take to others who can make those changes. Just the ideas. Let's, and we don't want to push too fast on things. I've always used the motto, slow is fast when it comes to people. And that's something that we don't, it's hard to do sometimes in education to move slow because you see things you want to be changed and you want to move fast, but you got to move slow. Slow is fast. It's in the book, Good to Great. I would highly recommend that. I have to start my timer here. I'm going to do that. As a is just a great concept. Slow is fast. If you move too fast, it's slow with people. So my presentation focuses on the people, structures, and systems, the blueprint for mathematical success. And the people aspect of that is the most important part of all of this. Like we'll talk more about this later, but structures, systems, effective teaching strategies, none of those are going to be reaching high levels of success without the right people in place. And right along with that is the culture. And I have that up here in the upper left, is culture first always. Like, read some John Gordon books. He's a great author. This little 3-word quote from him is so important. Like, as leaders, as teachers, anybody that works in a school building, we should always be looking at focusing on culture first. So no matter what our eyes are looking at with regards to hiring or structures or systems or anything that we do, like the culture, that's me in here. The culture first always has to be right there in your like front vision always. And I can't stress that enough because, that data that I showed you a little bit ago, the first year I took over as principal in this building, we had a strong team in place, the people aspect of my presentation, but the culture was hurting a lot in this building and therefore the climate. And that was producing poor results. It was a strong team that wasn't performing well. Students weren't achieving well because the culture and climate were in a poor place. And we spent all year one focusing on that culture, building up that culture and the climate of school all year one. Very little like structural changes, systematic changes. There's a few, but not much, because that had to happen first. If we would have tried to burn into it and change all these things, it wouldn't have worked, and we wouldn't be seeing the results that we are seeing. No matter where you're at with things, if your culture climate isn't in a good place, that's what you need to focus on first, not all the other things I'm going to talk about. Hopefully your school has that strong culture. And what I mean by culture is just that it's the shared beliefs in your school, the values, the attitudes that shape the interactions and behaviors of everybody in the building. And you want to foster that positive culture. That's the John Gordon stuff there. I mean, the first thing we did as a building, my summer before I started, was we read the Energy Bus for kids, and like just kind of building up that positive culture is huge. But that's what your culture is. For here, with sharing some of our shared beliefs, like all kids can learn, all kids, not just some, all, stressing that. That's just a cultural belief, that positive culture. We understand that there's challenges and you're going to have negative thoughts, and positive culture is important that we work on it. We choose to be positive not because life is easy, but because life can be hard. And we just it's a big undertaking, but that's a big part of it. Some other cultural beliefs that we are all about here is the science of reading. I know this is a math summit, but that's part of our culture. We believe in it hardcore, and it's actually I wrote a book on this with my brother-in-law that I would recommend. It's in my presentation too. That it's culture and science of reading and how we revamped our literacy instruction over the past several years, and we're seeing some massive gains in that as well. And be kind. That's part of our school culture. But what's yours? Yours might be different. And that strong culture contributes to establishing and sustaining a positive climate, because that climate's just like, how's the building feel? Like when you walk in, does it feel like this is a great place to work? And we get a lot of visitors that say that, and that just reinforces to all of us that, okay, we got that strong positive culture going and the climate feels good. And people want to come to school, people want to come to work, kids want to come to school, they feel good when they're here. And I could go on for this with this topic for hours, really. But just think of your kids. That's why we're all here, right? That's why I'm doing this presentation, to help you help your kids. And you're engaging in this presentation because you want to help your kids. So you think of that culture climate. Yeah, you'd love to come to school in a great culture climate with so the kids. And unfortunately, there's a lot of students that come to school and the place they just left is a very negative climate and a negative feel. Very unfortunate and out of our control. But the last thing they need to do is to come to a school and get that same feeling of just negativity. Like that just think on that for a little bit. There's so many reasons why it's important to build that, but that's just one strong one that always sticks out for me. So that's where we start, folks, with that culture climate, and work on that. Back up if you need to. Always nurturing it, always first, always. And I can't stress that enough. But I do need to move on, right? So the next the things I talk about in when I do these types of presentations is people, structures, and systems. Let's focus on that. Okay. So the people first, when you think of that aspect of it, like none of the things we do within the building are going to work at a high level if we don't have the right people in place. And you guys are the right people. I can tell that because you're watching and engaging in a presentation in the summer. So that's awesome and good for you. And when I talk about people, structures, and system, I have this visual here for you because people outweigh structures and systems by a long time, by a big, much difference there. And there's a Anthony Muhammad has that thing he mentioned about culture, just culture eats the strategies and technical things for breakfast. Like, you got to have the culture and the people in place. So just, stressing that. But so when I give this presentation, it's always hard because it's like, I could go on about culture and people for, like I said, for hours, but I got to move on because I don't want this to be 6 hours long. But I just can't stress to you guys enough, you know. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. Like I'm gonna first start talking about structures that these are big and important things, but not near as big as people and your culture. Okay, moving on, Brad. All right, here we go. So the one thing I like to talk about with the structure of the master schedule. Now, like I said, I'm a math guy. Schedules, like this type of stuff really jives with me, and I really enjoy building schedules and having just that structure. I got to have structure for my team. They appreciate it. And just make sure when you think about your master schedule, one thing we can working on maybe this summer is that you have the proper amount of time in there, time for tier one. And I got that as my number 2 point down here, but number one is time for intervention and enrichment. Is when you build a master schedule, you gotta build it kind of around that intervention time, as strange as that may sound, but you got to have time for that tier four, the intensive and specially developed support for students with IEPs. Got to have time for tier three. We do have a math interventionist. Like I said, we're a smaller school. We didn't actually add that until about 4 or 5 years ago, but it's needed. And in time for tier two, I'll explain how we do that here at Winskill. And then, those enrichment times, like, gotta have time in there. It's not, sometimes we focus too much on the intervention side of things, because those students need our support, and it's our empathy and, compassion wants to help build those students up naturally. And that's obviously a good thing, but we can't forget about high number of students that we have that they get tier one, they get it, and some of them already know it, or they're going to learn it really quick. And especially I always feel like in first grade and those lower grades, but all grades, that those students need to be pushed. They need to be challenged. That is highly important and needs to be talked about. Like I always, when talking to my math peeps, as I call them, when you have a meeting around mathematical conversations, make sure you balance your time between talking about intervention strategies, structures, and whatnot with enrichments. Record that. And your meeting's done. Did you spend 60 minutes talking about interventions and zero about enrichments? That's not okay. Let's balance our conversation. And putting it into the schedule is important. And then, of course, the proper time for tier one. We should be looking at in grades K through 2, you got to have the 10 minutes in there. We'll talk about the importance of this math later too. But in your schedule, math daily routines and quick practices, have that in there so that your teachers know this is when that happens. And for tier one, trying to schedule at 60 minutes for grades K through 5. And I do have an example of our master schedule that I'll pull up every once in a while. And sharing this with you, you guys can have access to this. I hope you do. But just reach out to me if you don't. It's rather complex to explain. And when you look at it, you're going to see like, well, Brad, didn't you say, to schedule 60 minutes for tier one? In first grade, you have 10 minutes for math daily routine and quick practice. But what about you only have 50 minutes for math tier one? Yes, you're right. And ideally 60 minutes. But you guys know, first grade is a huge year for literacy and kids learning how to read. And we feel like in our 4K program and our kindergarten program is so strong. Like you don't even see 4K in here, but that's where it all starts with math expressions and building those foundational skills right there in 4K. Kids come into kindergarten like ready to rock here at Winskill, and they come out of kindergarten ready to rock in first grade. Like, so we just have been okay with chiseling back. Just be careful of that in your district on those minutes. But ideally, yes, we want that 60 minutes for tier one. And so that master schedule, again, it's complex. Reach out if you have questions. It's super important though. And that's like one of the structures I'll talk about. A second one here that we do at Winskill that, maybe you agree with, maybe you don't, but we do departmentalize as far as like in 4th and 5th grade, we have 3 classrooms. We have a math teacher, we have an ELA teacher, and then a social studies science teacher. And we went to that my first year here, and it worked really well. Like teachers love it, which is great. Adds to that culture and the climate, because it really does reduce some stress level for teachers when you're focused solely on one subject, and you can get really good at delivering instruction there. So I would always highly recommend it. And then so there we moved it down to 3rd grade, a model of it in 3rd grade as well back in 2020. And that one's a little different because there's 4 teachers in 3rd grade. So I have 2 math teachers and 2 ELA teachers, and they share kids. And we've seen such great success in that in the last 4 years that I met with my 2nd grade team at about winter time, dead of winter there. And I brought up the idea like, hey, what do you guys think about departmentalizing in 2nd grade? Long story short, they were all in, I think, from the get-go, but of course we wanted to think through it. And it's just the kids are learning at a higher level because of our model or structure with departmentalization. And honestly, the teachers like it as well. Again, who doesn't want to reduce stress load a little bit? Like the more stress you have, the less effective you are in whatever you're doing. So if we can reduce stress load, if I can, as a principal, reduce stress load for my teachers, we're always going to have some level of stress. We understand that. But if I can reduce it, they're going to perform better. And so they're performing better in delivering instruction, etc. And they're focused on one subject for the most part. And they can get really good at it. And they can go to math conferences and you name it, and trust their team to teach those kids to learn how to read and, all that other stuff. They're going to be better at it. So, and naturally our kids are going to learn at a higher level because of it. And and we're seeing it. And I mentioned third grade. I just it popped in my head. Fast Bridge, the end of the year, third graders were at 95% proficient or advanced. 95%. It's working. The structure in fourth and fifth grade, including the win time. So like, when this, I'll just go to the schedule for this. So when you look at this, you're going to see some, let's focus on fifth grade. Like they have specials, they have core 1, core 2, lunch, core 3, little afternoon recess. And then they have this 3-group rotation that they do. We do the same thing in fourth grade. You'll see right there. But these are ability grouped. So the highest group is together. We do group them mostly based on reading scores, but we factor math into it. It's very complex. And then so the teacher, the math teacher in fifth grade can deliver an enrichment to the high math group, we'll call them. She's also delivering enrichment to the on level math group or whatever you want to call them, because data is just that pocket of kids is so much. And then in that third group, that's where some tier 2-ish stuff are happening, and also where tier 3 is being met with our interventionists. So that's our structure in fourth and fifth grade, and it works really well. And what we do, just FYI, is math, reading, which is also enrichment and intervention time in reading. We use junior grade books for enrichment, and things are going well there. And then it's also tier 1 writing. So that third group comes through with our literacy teacher and gets tier 1 writing at that time. The structure in third and second grade is a little different. It actually works out really well for reading, but I got to go back to that schedule to explain it best. So like in third grade, we're just focused on third grade, where they get their math. This middle column there, you see they get their math whole group in the morning, specials, and they go to their literacy teacher, and lunch, recess, lunch, and they go back to their literacy teacher. And then at the end of the day, they get some math small group time. And that's when they can meet with their tier 3 interventionists, the few that need it, and also some small group time with their math teacher. And the 2 math teachers in third and next year second grade can also share kids at that time too. So we share kids, and I'll just go right into our K1 structure as it's here. Look at kindergarten. You see in the morning after tier 1, they go right into a time slot where it's the intervention and enrichment time, and they share kids. So there's 4 regular education teachers and a special education teacher, and the math interventionist is involved. They're sharing kids within that 30-minute chunk, and it works beautifully. Highly recommend it. We do that K1, and we share a little bit in 2-3 as well, just less teachers involved in it because of the departmentalization. But we do that with reading too. So you can have this super high group that is meeting with one teacher, and then another high group just at maybe a little less level meeting with another teacher. And it works out like where you basically have one group that's tier 2 with a regular education teacher, and then another group that's tier 3. They're not really at a tier 3 level, but they need the most intensive support. That's with the interventionists. So that's those structures in those grades. And so again, the idea of this presentation: people, structures, systems. People, biggest part. Yes, Brad, I know we heard you the first time. Don't lose focus of that. Culture, most important. Those are some of the bigger structures that I like to present about. The next part, because you got to have those structures in place. Just think about, like, if you had 30 minutes for tier 1 instruction, like how could you possibly get things done at a high level? Like it'd be like saying, hey, why don't you go run a mile in 4 minutes? Go. You can't do it, so like you got to have all of those structures in place. And then I think of the structure as like a function, the math side of things. So like that's your function, and you any function like f of x equals the square root of x, to keep it super simple as a function, and you input, let's say 64, and then output comes of 8. So I think of the function as our structure that's got to be in place, and then input, output. So like I've kind of used the analogy of like we have this super complex structure that we like. The input is our kids, right? And they work through that structure and the systems inside that structure, and the output is their achievement. Those are the things that machine that you want to continuously nurture and tweak and build up to be the strongest machine possible. And so, but the structure's in place now, the systems, like, okay, when we look at the idea of this math summit, is effective strategies for effective teaching, and the 5 core structures, those are all super important, like core structures that are working within your structure and systems that you're operating. And the first one that we've stressed from day one is student discourse, or also known as math talk. Like, extremely important. And we always shoot for 60% of our allocated time for math instruction. That should be student discourse, students talking mathematically to each other, maybe to the group, but students verbally, discussing the mathematical concepts. Maybe they're teaching others, they're explaining how they got the answer, whatever that might be. 60% is that. And we know that's ambitious, but that's what we're shooting for. I got that from Timothy Canold, who wrote the book Heart. And we know it's aggressive, but let's set our goals high. So then when I go in and do some observations of teaching, it's not, and that's always in a coaching model, folks. Like, I'm not in there where you get your student discourse is 15% and you're busting your chops. No, not even close. Like, it's coaching. Like, okay, I got a stopwatch over here. I'm going to keep track of student discourse. End of the 15 minutes, like, hey, you are at 50%. That's amazing. Great job. Hey, I was in here today. Your student discourse was at 5%. It's okay. I just wanted to give you that feedback. I know some lessons are more conducive to math talk than others, but I'm just giving you that feedback so you know. And they're all like, yeah, no, I appreciate that. You're right. This lesson just didn't build up to that. And I need to focus more on student discourse, because if we lose focus on it and we don't think about it, we don't set goals, we end up teaching. And maybe it's because that's how we learn. Maybe that's because as teachers we like to talk a lot. Whatever it might be, we gotta focus on that, so we do make sure we nurture an environment that's conducive to a lot of student discourse. The other, two of the other 5 core structures that Shannon's looking at here, quick practice and daily routines being one of them, and huge. I already mentioned earlier in this presentation that it's got to be in your schedule, and teachers know, okay, at 8:10, right after morning meeting, I got 10 minutes to, and we're not going to be got to be done in 10 minutes, but that's what it's scheduled to be, that I'm going to get my math daily routines in, and my quick practices, if that's what you got at that grade level. And then when it's in the schedule, you just do it. And then you get it's a daily routine. Boom, kids know every day. And you guys know that the kids are leading that. And, teachers are building up the capacity for kids to lead that. And I can come in and observe it and see it happening, and kids leading. It's awesome. Right. And when I first saw these, when I first got here, like, remember, I'm high school mindset, teaching, and the calculus was my favorite subject to teach. And I come here, and as the first observing math daily routines, I'm like, these are amazing. And part of it is like, these are boring because they're repetitive and whatnot. But at the same time, like, no, they're not boring. These are amazing because they're solidifying those foundational concepts of mathematics that kids need to know. And one of my I was going to bring this up at the beginning, because when you think of, like, why are you here in August watching a math summit? Why are we so highly involved and engaged in becoming the best math instructor, or math leader, or principal leading mathematics, or whatever it is, as we possibly can be. I remember when I first took over as principal, I brought in someone named Mary Richards, amazing woman from Wisconsin who was coming in to do some professional development for math expressions. And she led by saying, as you understand that if kids are behind mathematically after third grade, that it is very unlikely that they'll ever catch up, that they'll always struggle at math. And that if that's the case, you're literally closing doors for those kids in elementary school. And when I started thinking about that, it's like, wow, closing doors, and then I started learning, when I saw the third grade math curriculum, and, you guys know, or some of you know, if you've taught in that level, like in those younger grades, we're learning those foundational skills, so important that they're just ingrained, and kids have all of those in place because they get to third grade and all of a sudden that airplane starts taking off the runway. Like we're doing multiplication and division and introduction to fractions and area and perimeter. And it's like, whoa, we're soaring. And it's awesome. And but if kids are behind after that grade level, how hard it is for fourth grade and fifth grade. And then I taught middle school for 1 year, and it was very eye-opening because there was kids in there that hated math, seventh graders, because it was so hard. And it's probably because they were just didn't get it. And then they just didn't get it, didn't get it, didn't get it. And now I got a teacher teaching me how to do this. I haven't understood math for 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is. And that's because they didn't get the foundational skills in those lower grades. And it was hard. And unfortunately, sometimes humans, when things are hard, they try for a certain amount of time, and then they just give up. But they still got to go to classes, and they still get Fs and yelled at by their parents because of poor grades. And I don't get this. But the closed doors aspect of things, folks, is what I think you really want to hit to your heart. Because I remember a student I had in high school, and actually I had her as a seventh grader. She hated math, hated in high school. When she was in high school, she wanted to be a vet tech. And she never did achieve that goal because she hated math. And she couldn't have possibly passed algebra 2. And it never got that opportunity to pursue her dream because she couldn't go to college. And that's what she needed to do to achieve that. That's the closing doors. When I saw that come full circle, and it didn't take me long, it really hit me. And I hope it just, I share that to people that I know it'll hit too, because of how important it is what we're doing down here at the elementary level. And unfortunately, there's a lot of just people that aren't in a school district, or maybe even like I was as a high school math person, that didn't understand that. It's only first grade. It's only kindergarten. Like, really? That's such an inaccurate statement. So just we can't close doors on the kids. And then quick practices of math daily routines just builds the student leaders, right? Like they're up front, and how important it is for us to build leaders within our students. And this is just one example, but we should be thinking about that. And I like the idea of not just being your high flyers. Yeah, we want our high flyers to build on their leadership skills too. But you start developing confidence in those kids that maybe struggle a little bit in math, and they become leaders and build that confidence. You're going to build their levels of achievement along with leadership too. It's like a win-win, you know. And then the last couple of core structures is building concepts and helping community. Like I was fortunate to be able to understand math easily, but definitely a visual guy with learning math. And things are very abstract at times. Like I just helped my nephew get ready for algebra it wasn't algebra 2, it was a bridge algebra class, but it was algebra 2 concepts. And he didn't understand them. And I wasn't going to be able to teach him 10 years of mathematics to help him because things were so abstract to him. Like they didn't make any sense. And so like we need to build that understanding of what we're doing. Like the teachers that teach 3/5 divided by a fourth, and hey, just flip 1 and 4 and multiply, works every time. Like those math tricks. Ooh, don't teach the tricks, because tricks work, but you are setting kids up to, oh, I don't know, say to fail, but the kids that don't get it, don't understand it, but I know that math trick, and we just cross multiply and divide. Works every time. You're not building up the actual understanding of the concept. So like my nephew who's trying to add two fractions that are got algebraic formulas involved, like y over y minus 2 squared plus 4 over y minus 1. Okay, how do you want me to simplify that? He didn't understand, and I didn't blame him because he wasn't taught correctly, and so he didn't get that. And then the last concept is that helping community. Just we're all here to help each other, and that's what I'm trying to do. It's the point of why I'm here, and you're hearing me is I want to serve others and help others. And part of why I got into administration, because I love teaching math, scared about getting into administration for a little bit, is I felt my impact could be more. And I don't know how many kids this will impact. Teachers obviously need to be impacted first and learn, and then take those things to others. But the more that we serve and help others within our community and outwardly, that just spreads, like we've all seen it. We've been in a room of people, and all of a sudden somebody's negative, and that spreads. I was at our 5th grade field trip and was grilling out hamburgers and brats and for the kids, and there's one kid who was a student leader who, as they were leaving, they're like, "Hey, thanks for cooking lunch, Mr. Sturmer." And boom, 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 about 8 other kids. "Thank you, thanks, Mr." If she didn't do that, I probably wouldn't have heard it from those others. Just you serving and helping others and being that positive presence will spread. So, and I know that's who you are because you're here in August watching this. Some other systems, folks, you gotta have the right tools in place. Your math expressions as your tier 1, that's fantastic because it's a great resource. I had to pull teachers away from teaching. Like I literally remember going into a classroom and watching a teacher teach out of the teacher's edition, like almost like verbatim. And that person doesn't teach here anymore, but I had to pull people away from that. It's a resource, and it's a great resource, but we don't have to just follow that to fidelity because we know how to teach. Like there's things you have to do, like daily routines, quick practices. Yeah. Student discourse, 60% of the time, got to do those things. But for example, we don't use workbooks in grades 2 through 5 because we just don't. Teachers have created their own materials. We don't do the mile wide, okay, teach and finish 20 problems. And what's the point of that? Do a few, dig deep, get for that conceptual understanding of that concept. And I'd like to get K1 to come off those workbooks too, and we're close, but they can be kind of a crutch, I feel like, because the average teacher can teach out of the TE, here's some workbook problems, feel like I did my job. But high level, and the part of people, structure, and systems, I maybe went a little too long with that, but just understand that that's a great resource. People, and that's always why that big box was more important. And just the tools that we use. And I'd ask, like I don't know, I felt like this when I was teaching high school too, when I had like, how do I enrich kids? What do I use to enrich kids? And it's like, it was always like, what's up here? What came into my mind for the day? Just creativity. I mentioned we got junior grade books we use for enrichments in reading, and just literacy in general. It's a great resource. We don't have a resource per se for enrichment. And so our teachers work really hard on building up a library and like, Google, and just having resources there that help push kids. And they go out and learn, and they're awesome people. And they try to come up with, the best ways to push kids. So if you guys have had or found any ways or resources um, that you use that are highly effective, please share, in that helping community aspect. And then I believe, let me check, I got two more structure or system pieces to talk about. This one's deep, very important, your MTSS, how that looks within your school, multi-tiered systems of support, of course. And this sets us up for like how we utilize our win time, that you saw on the schedule. And we meet every 6 weeks on an early release, and we just talk about these groups. And so like this is an example of second grade from this past school year. So you have way over here on the left is like your high group, and then your another blue is like your high groups. And then green's kind of on level. And maybe you have a group here, it's kind of in that tier 2-ish, they need some extra support. And then over here, you got the group that your math interventionist is working with. So we meet every 6 weeks, and we, at the beginning of the year, these groups are created from previous year data, and then we do what we do within those 6 weeks. And on the intervention side, you progress monitor and see how kids are doing. And then every 6 weeks, like maybe our goal obviously is to get kids out of this group and into this group, and then kids in this group into this group, and just keep moving kids to the left. And that's kind of what the MTSS document looks like in that process. But just keep in mind when you think about MTSS and we talk about support, that this is support for kids that need to be pushed too, like not just kids that need interventions. So that's a big system, and I talk about that in like a whole different presentation. We have a very robust one for reading as well, and working on one with SEL. And but just that's got to be in place as another system. And then of course Math Genius Squad. Like I remember hearing about this, and teacher leader in the building, her name's Mrs. Spurley, and I met with Shannon via Zoom, and I was showing her like all this, like, Shannon, we got some really great things going on here. Like how can Math Genius Squad meant for schools like us, like that are doing well. So yeah, a lot of times I get people that want to use Math Genius Squad where their school's struggling and they need the support, and of course everybody needs support no matter where you're at. And so I was all in. I was like, let's do this. And so we got Math Genius Squad, and we loved it, and our teachers loved it, and it really made us better. So like when you saw that growing data that you saw earlier, Shannon is a part of that, and the Math Genius Squad is very effective. Our teachers really love the videos and the slides, and just it's you talk about teacher stress level and reducing that. The Math Genius Squad does that as well. I highly recommend it. But yeah, that's kind of my spiel, folks. I'm here to help if you want to reach out. I got to mention, my brother-in-law and I wrote a book. We were working on it about a year ago. It came out last August. It's all about literacy, which is pretty cool. I've always been a math guy and came in as an elementary principal. Like, I know what I'm doing here. But I had no clue how kids learn how to read. When I first saw our data as a school with regards to literacy, I literally almost threw up. That was how bad it was. And like, I knew that I needed to learn. And my brother-in-law, who is a literacy savant, we just teamed up, and he was feeding me stuff, science of reading, and we ended up writing a book because we felt it could help others. The whole point of why we wrote it. So if your school, and it's a lot of culture climbing here, which wouldn't surprise you. But if your school needs, I'd recommend this read if you're for even if your school doesn't need support in literacy, but most schools do, especially the pandemic slowed things down a little bit there too. But like I said, folks, I hope you enjoy the presentation. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You got my email there. I'm just here to help. So, and kudos to you, giving you credit for watching this. You know, I'm kind of a calm, boring, maybe sounding person, highly passionate when it comes to math, but I stay pretty even keeled. So kudos to you for staying through this presentation for the whole time. I do get pretty jacked when I see the math data, and our teachers love seeing me come out of that even keeledness when I get a little excited. But anyways, have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Rock it next school year. Kids are dependent on you. Way to be a strong leader. See you down the road.